Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I mentioned to you a couple of months ago that I bought this wagon, and today I'm finally going to show it to you. I've been busy with the girls that are here on temporary board. You know, Posey got sick, she got a urinary tract infection, and we had to deal with her at the doctor. And then having some crabbing issues where we pretty much worked through it, but I guess anytime you put 5 females together, you're going to have issues. I think it's just the nature of the beast, plus 2 of them are pregnant, so they got hormones racing all over the place. My 2 are imprinted, and they are just super affectionate and want to be with you and want to be in your back pocket. And the other 3 are not imprinted and don't really care anything about you unless you're going to feed them. So my girls just want to be with them, and when they're with them, they don't want them with them. They want to bite them, they want to kick out at them, they want to run them off, and they just want to be ugly. But I think we pretty much worked through the majority of the issues. They're all 5 up underneath the shade tree right now, just kind of chillaxing. I'll show them to you at the end of the video. But this is the Roberts wagon that I picked up a couple of months ago. This is called a trail ride in their catalog. If you don't know anything about Roberts wagons, they are made in Canada and they are mass produced, and they make a whole spectrum from vis-a-vis to hearses to wagons to European type stuff. They make all kinds of stuff. But they are mass produced and they are built on the cheaper end. So by being built on the cheaper end, they are in the affordable arena for the majority of people that want a wagon. These wagons are made out of super low grade softwood, probably a spruce or a fir. Real common in Canada, but in my opinion, this particular wagon, this wood is firewood quality. That's the grade of it. I don't know if all of their wagons are built with super low grade wood. I know they do have an oak trail wagon that is made out of oak, obviously, but this one is not. This wood is so soft that you can basically screw an eye bolt into here without drilling a hole and without any tools. You could just literally screw it in. I mean, it is super low grade. It is knot holed, it is split, it is splintered. Just standing right here, knot hole, 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 knot hole. I mean, that's, you know, like 20 just on this side right here. I'm going to show you a little bit more in a few minutes. But they are built on the cheaper end so that, like I said, the majority of people can get into them. They typically don't last a whole long time because if these stay out in the weather, they rot very quickly. The metal on them is not powder coated. They do not prime the metal prior to painting. They just paint it so it chips very quickly. The wood is just painted. It is not primed before it's painted, so it chips and comes off very easily. There's no suspension on this wagon. You can see it's just a tube steel frame. The box is mounted to it. It's just a straight axle. And then the same up front. There is a 5th wheel that the axle pivots on up front so you can turn. And because of that, this works real good on an asphalt or on a street environment. But if you were to go down a dirt road or go out in the pasture or something like that, you are going to rattle your teeth out. Going back to the wood on it, this could have been a situation where, like when we go into a lumber store, we pick and choose lumber, and if it's split or got a knot hole in it or something, we push it off to the side, and you can see where everybody's done that prior to you getting there. They could have gotten to the end of the week, their wood shipment didn't come in, this was all the picked over wood that was left out in the yard, and they said, well, we don't have a choice, we got to use the wood because we don't have any wood delivered yet. That could have been the case, or this could be their standard. I don't know the answer to that. But I can tell you that I have not met anybody that has a Roberts wagon or has had a Roberts wagon that has not had to do some type of work to it to make it better, to make it safer, or to improve the capabilities of it. I talked to one guy that had a Cinderella hearse. He had to weld extra bars in it to bring the sides up higher to make it safer. He had to weld doors on it to keep, people from small childs from jumping out possibly. I talked with a guy that had a hearse. He said he had it for 3 months and he had to repaint the frame because the frame was chipping, and he had to go to an actual hearse shop here in the States and buy an adjustable casket lock. When you, in a hearse, there's basically a pad up front, a padded board up front, and when you slide the casket in the back, you slide it in till it bumps that board up front, and then you can stick a lock in the back. And depending on how long the casket is, you can stick that lock into a series of different holes. It's about a foot adjustment. If you had a standard size casket, that's great. But if you had a child casket or an extra tall person, then you've got to adjust it. And when he bought the hearse, it only came with one hole in it, which was for a standard casket. So he had to go and buy the adjustable peg lock and improvise his casket right after he bought it. And then he had to repaint the frame. So I haven't met anybody that has or has had a Roberts wagon or product that hasn't had to do some type of work on it. This one, I had to add a step to it, which you'll see in a few minutes. When I got it, it needed a lot of work. It needed to be touch-up painted, the frame and the box. The brakes were locked up. There was no dust caps on the wheels. The wiring, they had added some strobe lights, which you'll see, and the wiring inside was just an absolute train wreck. I think the floor had rotted out at some point because there are signs underneath the wagon and there are signs inside of the wagon that boards have been replaced, the seats have been removed, new holes have been drilled. So I'm not real sure what that was all about because it was done prior to me. But I've addressed the majority of the issues. They had screws all in the side of this, so I had to remove screws. I had to wood putty them. I had to do a lot of work up here. This driver's box, the seat did not have struts on it. So I put gas struts on it so it'll hold itself up. The floor goes all the way down into here, and you cannot stand inside the box back there and reach down in here and get to the bottom. It's just too far. So I put a false floor in right here. So I have all of this right here as storage so that you can get to jackets, Bluetooth speakers, hats, jackets, gloves, blankets, that type of stuff. So I added those struts. Those were not there. I added this step. I touched up paint. I redid the brakes. The wiring that was in here, it was just a spider web of wiring. And it was just, they bought a 20-foot roll of wire. They needed 10 foot. Well, they just left the other 10 foot in there. And then they just crimped it all together, and it was just a spider nest. So I went in, I cut all the wiring out. I soldered all the wires together, I shrink wrapped them, and then I wire loomed them, and then I stapled them out of the way, and then I added the false floor. It came with a team pole, and I don't have it on right now. I just have the tractor attachment so you can move it around. This is just an example of the knot holes. This is the footboard. You got knot hole here, knot hole here. 4 knot holes right there, 1 right there, up there. All of the white spots are knot holes because the paint came off of them. Split in the wood. See the knot hole there, 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 there. So the footboard is mounted on these angles, and they're put in with lag bolts. And the lag bolts are screwed through the front of the wagon. But let me show you what's going on inside. So underneath the driver's seat, you've got these cleats right here. And you see that this driver's footrest is screwed through and into that cleat to give it more of an anchor. This one over here, however, they completely missed the mark. And 3 of the 4 aren't even in the cleat, and the 4th one right there is barely in the cleat. So what I'm gonna have to do is remove this cleat, scoot it over so that I can get all of these in here, because that side of the step is loose. And then the other thing I've got to do is clean up all this wiring. The guy that did the wiring just didn't have attention to detail. So now that this thing's all cleaned up, you can see I moved the cleat over. I ended up making a new one. And then I've got all of the bolts through the actual cleat. So that footrest up front is very solid now. And then all the wiring is done up all nice and neat, all nice and clean. No more spider nest in there. Lastly, this whole area down here was full of garbage when I got it. You cannot get down here. You can't reach. I'm still 8 inches from touching the bottom. So if you put anything down there, you gotta like lay over it, get your feet off the ground and get down there. So I built this little frame around the battery to keep the battery in place. And then I put these cleats in right here. And then I made this false floor right here. Now you got 10 inches of depth, 48 inches, and 19 inches. So anything that's big you can put down underneath if you want, but this is going to be able to hold all the jackets, blankets, anything like that. And then when you close the lid and you're sitting up there, nobody can get in. But if you need something, just come, lift it up, and you've got accessible storage. Battery charger stays hooked up all the time. That PVC pole is just temporary, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a gas strut right here, like you have on the back of your hatchback. So now it's all nice and clean. Super happy with that. This is the switch that they had mounted to operate the strobes on the wagon. Of course you can see it's all rusted and it just very janky looking. So what I ended up doing is I ended up removing it, and I ended up putting this switch in right here. So now when you turn it on, you've got strobes, front and rear. And you'll notice that there is a red LED light inside of the switch, and when I turn it on, the light doesn't come on, but the strobes do. That was intentional by me. That was going to require me to run an additional wire to ground that switch out. I don't need the light on that switch to light up when the lights it's operating are right here. So this is the wheel brake cylinder that pushes out on the brake shoes to make them go on the inside of the drum. And these are the brake shoes. So this is locked up. There's a piston inside of here, and this is supposed to depress and go in, and it doesn't. It's frozen. It doesn't go anywhere. So I've got new ones to replace them, one for each side. And then I'm gonna have to order new brake shoes because this one is just completely gone. That one's there, the front one's there, but the back one is just completely gone. So I'll replace that wheel cylinder, get new pads for both sides, and then the brakes will be good. It took a few days, but the new shoes finally came in. I had to order them because it is a specialty marine grade application. So this is a anti-corrosion type coating and stuff, but it's just, I assume it's used mostly in a saltwater environment, but they were pretty expensive, but they're here. If you notice, there's a bunch of nicks and scars and bumps and bruises here, here, just basically all over. They're gonna happen. And then up on the front, on your footrest, on your seat. What I did is I bought a can of touch-up paint, and I went around and I touched up this side last night. And you can see I took care of all of those little imperfections. I've got a few more that I've got to do. I had some screw holes there, 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 and there. The guys had screws stuck in all over the side of this thing. To give you an idea, here is the back going in. And then here's the side that I touched up already. It's not perfect, but you're not going to be able to tell from 50 feet away. Next thing I'm going to do is, after I touch up these seats and touch up the back of the seat there, this mat is going to go in, and you can see that it's wider than the stanchions of the seats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unbolt every seat bracket, unbolt every one. I'm going to lift the seat up, unroll this, lay it down the center of the floor, and then I'll put it back and I'll bolt the legs back down through this, and that way this won't blow out when I'm going down the road to a job. And then I'll touch up the paint on the sides. And then the steps need to be done as well. One of the oversights in the building of this wagon is you got a step right here, and then there's no step until you get up to here. From the bottom of that footrest to that step right there is 24 inches. There needs to be a step in the sidewall right here. Because when you put your right or your left foot right here on this footrest, there's nowhere to go. So somebody added this handhold right here. And I'm assuming what they were doing is they were grabbing that handhold and grabbing the footrest and then pulling themselves up and putting their knee right here until they stood up. You can do this any number of ways. You can put your left foot up here. You can put your right foot up here. You can put your right foot on the tire and then your left foot up there. But here's the dilemma. You gotta go up to here. It just doesn't work out real good. Onto your knees, and then stand up, and then sit down. It's just not real smart design. And then getting down's even worse. I see why they put this handhold right here. But there needs to be a step right here so that you can go left foot, right foot, left foot. So what I've done is I bought this folding step right here. And I am going to mount it at the 12-inch mark right here. Like I said, from here to there is 24 inches. So right here is about 12 inches. And then it'll fold up when you don't need it. So I've measured this out. And if I drill it through right here, I'm gonna catch a piece of angle iron on the inside of the box that holds the corner of the box together right here. So if I measure correctly, I should come out right through the piece of that angle iron right there. Then I'll have 2 inches of thickness right here between that 5/8 and that 1.5 inches. And then I'll have another 1/8 inch of metal. So that should be a pretty solid foundation for a step. Mount it all nice and neat. Folds up out of the way. Fits flush on the side of the trim right there. Nice clean installation. Bottom, 12 inches, 12 inches. And on the inside, went right through the angle iron like I said. So now that this is rock solid, like I said, you can fold it up when you don't need it. But it isn't gonna hurt anything folded down because this actually sticks out so much further than this, so it can stay folded down all the time. You only need one on one side because the teamster can get up, go over to the other side, and then the assistant teamster can come up right behind him and sit on this side. So let's see how this thing works out. You can grab the handle or the top of the seat. I'm grabbing the top of the seat because it's higher and it's more comfortable. Put my right foot on the tire, my left foot here, my right foot here. And up here. So much easier. That's the way it should have been done from the factory. Have no idea why they didn't. Coming down, just as easy. Right foot, left foot, right foot. Now, I can delete this handle right here. And I'll just take my wood putty and putty these holes up. This is the handle that I'll be deleting and wood puttying those holes. And right here in the corner where these 3 holes were, there was a black bracket, one on either side of the strobe. And they must have held some sort of a headlight or something that was battery powered. Just this big black bracket that stuck out about 4 inches. So I removed those already, wood puttied those holes. I'll do the same with these. The benches down the side are 9.5 feet long each. I didn't like that black rubber mat that I showed you earlier, so I ended up adding this mat. It's a carpeted indoor-outdoor, and it works out a lot better. It's a lot thicker. I haven't painted on either side of the floor mat yet. See, this is pretty much what the entire wagon looked like. What I ended up doing back here in the back is I bought this carpet threshold and I cut it to length and I nailed down the floor mat so that you don't have a trip hazard when you're getting in and, you know, getting that mat up underneath your foot and stuff. So I thought that turned out real nice as well. The struts up front, got one on either side. And what I ended up having to do was cut the false floor in half. I've got 2 finger holes on each one, and that way you can put half of it in and then the other half in. It wouldn't go in with the struts, with both struts in, but I needed both struts to balance this out. But I don't mind having it cut down the middle because I can just pick it up if I need to just get under one side. Steps have been painted. I left these eye bolts in the side because you can hang Christmas lights on there. You could hang a banner from there if you were in a parade, that type of stuff. I had my Amish buddy sew me this seat or cushion, whichever you want to call it. It's 2 inches thick. There's nothing up there. You could put a blanket up there or whatever you wanted to, but I just wanted to have it finished. So I sent him the dimensions up in Ohio. He made me a cushion. Now you and your assistant teamster will have a comfortable ride. Overall, it's a very nice wagon. It's very solid. It's got good bones. All of the structural issues had all been addressed prior to me getting it. It was everything that I needed to do was cosmetic and then just a little bit of mechanical with the brakes. I didn't have to redo all the electrical, but I'm that anal and I just didn't like that spider web of electrical. As you can see, their quality control is lacking in a few departments as well. I think, you know, being mass produced, you know, if John doesn't come in on Friday, then they put Sam in there and Sam doesn't work in that department. Quality control, there's just so many going out the door, quality control doesn't catch them all. And you wind up with, like I showed you, this strut completely missing the brace on the inside and me having to redo that. But that should have never made it out of the factory like that. That should have been caught. But that goes back to them being a mass-produced, cheap, entry-level wagon. Now, if you're okay with the low quality of wood, and if you can keep it in a shop, then this is a great wagon. This one was built in the first month of 2006, so it's 18 years old. And as you saw in the videos, it looked like hell, but it looks pretty good now. It's very presentable now. And you could buy a wagon with suspension under it, like a Pioneer running gear, which is now Weaver, a Weaver wagon. But you're going to end up spending, to get the equivalent of this in a brand new Weaver wagon, you're going to end up spending, you know, in the neighborhood of $12,000. This is less than half of that. And I'm in this for pennies compared to a new wagon. But at the end of the day, this wagon is going to generate as much income as a wagon that costs 2 or 3 times more. It's just like you driving your 2006 Hyundai Sonata to work and the guy that parks right next to you is driving a 2024 Mercedes S-Class. He spent $100,000 on his and you spent $3,000 on yours, but they both do the same thing. They both get you from point A to point B safely, and they do the intended purpose. But if you're okay with a cheaper built wagon, one that's mass produced, one that may have had some things overlooked while it was in the factory, one that you may have to improvise to make it more suitable for your day-to-day activities, whatever they may be, then Roberts is a great choice. But if you're not okay with that, if you're one of those people that's got to have the best of the best, then don't look at one of these. But this is going to produce a lot of income during the holidays coming up. Overall, I'm very pleased with it. It's going to do exactly what I need it to do. People are going to be able to get in and out, small children, elderly, all of that. Not going to have to worry about them climbing over the side of my farm wagon or having to put a ladder up for them to get in or any of that nature. So got to do a couple more things to it to call it finished, but overall it's about 99%. So I appreciate you watching. As always, remember who you are, be kind to those around you, stand up for what you believe in.